Hello my fantastic friends and welcome to another video. Apologies for the terrible grainy video quality. If you're wondering why I have webcam on but I'm covering my face, it's because I am a minor. Now today is going to be a bit of a different video, as you can see. Now I was looking through YouTube for Xmen 97 news because I'm interested in it, and I spotted this very specific genre of videos about how the new show will be going woke. I'm just here to say that Xmen for most of its history has always been quote-unquote woke. People are getting very flustered over this one article. Xmen 97 executive producer Bo DeMaio reveals series stories informed by his experience as a black gay man, going as far as to say it's DOA over this one article. I will link the article in the description if you're interested in reading it. Now, this is obviously ridiculous. I probably wouldn't be talking about this if it was just some random people with no views. However, this is not the case. These videos are reaching people and I felt like I need to say a word on it. First of all, wouldn't you want somebody who has faced discrimination at the head of writing this? Of course there are bad ways to write injustice and handle social issues, but that isn't the point here. Looking at it objectively, the X-Men and mutants have always been discriminated against, treated differently, and in turn felt differently. Would you not want somebody who knows what this feels like, that has plenty of experience with this, using it to his advantage to write a more authentic story? I think some people read this as meaning that he'll make everybody gay or something and make the story solely about his experience or something, but anybody with half a brain cell would understand that the title means what it means. The story will be informed by his experience as a black gay man. This means that he will use his human experience to help enhance the story and make it feel more real. A common argument is that his sexuality or race is completely irrelevant, but what do people even mean by this? Completely irrelevant to what? X-Men the animated series as a whole? Well, as I stated, it's not. People also like to pretend like X-Men TAS itself had no messages of social justice, even though there's actual real-world racism against Stormwind and themes of political corruption, just to name a couple of instances. While mutants are separate from direct minorities, obviously, the message of treating those different from you with respect and kindness is sewn in with the message of X-Men as a whole. It's a huge plot point, and guess who is discriminated against most? Minorities. Where do you think they got these references of discrimination from? Stan Lee may not have made X-Men with the original intent of it to fight bigotry, but there were a lot of social movements going on at the time that probably did affect his writing without him even realizing it. Almost like your human experiences, the whole thing that shapes your life, has an effect on how and what you write. He later realized how great of a metaphor X-Men could make for disenfranchised and marginalized people. And the people so against woke X-Men really only have the point that the X-Men comics weren't originally made to fight racism and injustice, and how Stan Lee didn't consciously do this. He even admitted the metaphor fell in his lap. But like, why is that such an important argument? It's not. Do you realize how much stuff like this happens in writing? Everything you write is informed by the real world, so even if you don't write something consciously thinking it to be reminiscent of something else or to be connected, you can often go back and realize how it's maybe similar to something else and lean more into that narrative, create a more compelling story or character. It's not such a big deal that the very original conscious intent, going back decades, wasn't to fight for social justice or against bigotry. Stan Lee himself, if we are going to acknowledge his word as so almighty and important, said he realized when it got going that they would be a great vehicle to talk about racial prejudice. And of course, I'm not saying that everything is a metaphor for something and that you're never consciously writing about what you think you are. Of course not, that's not what I was saying anyways. But stuff like this happens, and who the hell decides Stan Lee's X-Men era is the most definitive? Chris Claremont is arguably the most prolific and definitive X-Men writer, not to forget the editors who worked with him. He's the reason why we have a lot of the main characterizations and storylines we do today. Chris Claremont, without a doubt, had progressive messages written within his stories. And I know mutants are their own thing, but X-Men and mutants were many times used as a metaphor for those others. Sure, a lot of people can relate to the X-Men, but a lot of people who relate are those who are massively disenfranchised and bullied. And looking outside of the X-Men, there were themes of real-world racism and homophobia in his writing. Not only that, Chris definitely laced the story with queer undertones, as well as having a literal lesbian couple, Mystique and Destiny. If you think that's woke now, imagine what it was considered in the 80s. Chris may not have always handled things the best since it was a product of its time, but there's no doubt he tried to incorporate diversity and a message of inclusion and acceptance in his stories that the majority of comics weren't at the time. To reject the rich themes of social justice and equality that have been present in Xmen for most of its history is simply to cage yourself, to bend the story to what you want to fit your own views of the world. Xmen will always mean so much to me, and many others. There's a reason why I've always been attracted to Xmen more than other superhero stories. Without even knowing much about it at first, it always seemed to speak to me more. I'm bisexual and neurodivergent, living in the South, a place where people like me are oftentimes not understood. Sometimes I feel like a mutant. That might sound corny as hell, but I don't really care. For me, Xmen will always be about fighting for what's right and trying to make the world a better place. Truly highlighting that by incorporating themes that many comics were too afraid to at the time. In my mind, forever cementing it as something that will stand for justice and equality. Thanks for watching. Remember to be kind, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!